2, 1, action.
Good evening, everyone. We have called the meeting to order. We approved the agenda. We entered executive session. We are now at item 1.4. Recommended action, be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby leaves executive session and returns to the work session.
So moved.
Second?
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Moving into item 2.1, our work session. It's a presentation of building goals for 2025-2026. I will turn this over to Superintendent Walker.
Thank you, Juana. Good evening, everyone. I just want to say very briefly thank you to our 7 outstanding building leaders for making the time to be here this evening, for all the time you spent in putting this together and designing the goals themselves, and most importantly, for leading this incredible and inspiring work. So I wanted to remind everyone that, as we've shared previously, the building goals and the work of the district emanate from the vision map and the district goals and areas of focus for this year. There are 4 of them, as we've shared before. 3 of them are exactly the same as they were last year, right? And there's intentionality in that because we want to make sure that there's longevity and consistency and cohesiveness in the work of the system year over year. And we've added a 4th area of focus this year in thinking about that broader definition of what success means in schools. So as we hear from our phenomenal building leaders this evening, let's pay attention to kind of those through lines and how that work is going to be manifesting itself in all 3 schools, beginning with our friends at CET. I'll be happy to turn it over to Carrie and Craig. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much. It is really an honor to talk about how our CET goals for the year are so aligned with the district goals, but also so scaffolded and following the progression of the previous few years that we've been working on. You've all heard about the house system for a few years and ITAD, and what we're really proud of is how each of those things have evolved and have different iterations and have become more complex or rigorous and more engaging for our students and faculty and staff. So we're very excited about that. So aligned with the district goals, we're going to talk about those 4 goals and what they look like and what our vision is at CET. So the first one we're going to talk about is our class design. And our multi-year vision has not changed too much from last year because we're still on that same trajectory of a vision of what we would like to see in the next few years. One of the things that we did add, though, was some targeted skills-based configurations for ELA instruction across grade levels in the future. We're piloting that concept right now with AIS groups, where we're having flexible AIS groups that instead of, first grade all goes to AIS at this specific time, and second grade goes at this specific time. If a child has a need and it's being covered with a different grade level or a different cohort of children, we're really honing in on what skills children need rather than placing them in groups by grade level, placing them in groups by what the targeted instruction that they need. So that's something that we want to kind of look at. How can that look across a grade level in the future? Our goals specifically for this year are to implement interdisciplinary and authentic learning experiences across different ages and disciplines. We are going to continue to gauge the interest of a multi-age class for 26 and 27, and also talk about and explore what electives can look like at the elementary level. We know that, it's at the elementary level, every teacher is a teacher of all subjects, but we want to be able to offer some other experiences for our students. So what does that look like at a CET level as opposed to high school or middle school? So the action steps that we're really excited about taking this year, I think most of the public knows by now, we are implementing 3 team teaching models this year at CET. There's a team in kindergarten, a team in 1st, and a team in 3rd grade. And so we're going to continue to have ongoing discussion about team teaching and the impact that that's having on instruction and our students' overall experiences. We were very excited at Back to School Night to have those team teachers present their families together in one big group. So that was really nice. You can see there's a picture up there of Miss Liss and Miss Chausa, and they had all of their families together, and they talked about what their goals were for the team teaching and how that can impact differentiation, connection, socialization. So we're really excited about that. And so there'll be a lot of ongoing discussion about our team teaching models. Our ITAD / multi-age collaborations, this year, because of our master schedule, there's a block of time in schedules for there to be collaborations between special area teachers and first grade, kindergarten, and fourth grade. Which is, when we first started with ITAD 4 years ago, it was more focused on the older kids because of the number of sections we had of each grade level. With the decreased section in K and 1 this year, we're able to provide more opportunities for that for our younger kids. What we're really excited about is that those collaborations can take place in some of our most amazing new spots at CET. Our library is absolutely amazing. Kids are so excited, and it's so conducive to group work and collaboration and for kids to be in comfortable spaces while they're learning and working. We also have the improvements and enhancements to the gym that kids are excited about. Our kindergarten amphitheater is pretty much done, and we already have plans in the making for our third grade show, our third grade performance, to be done at night in the amphitheater around the holidays with a theme of lights for their show. So people are really excited about taking advantage of these new spaces. Again, we have our multi-age teamings. This is the second year, and just to recap what that is, every single teacher at CET is paired up with a teacher on a different grade level, and they bring their classes together for curriculum connections. So things that may be scaffolded, you might be introduced to something in first, but then it's expanded on in third, so those first and third grade classes can come together and do some really unique teaching up, teaching down, working together. So we're excited about that being curriculum-based and interest-based and having that continue. We do have our skills-based configuration for AAS, like I talked about. And we are really excited about asking our teachers, resurveying our teachers to see what they identify as passions and who they can work with, who might have a similar passion in the building and something that they can work out together. So there's so many authentic collaborations that take place. Last year we piloted Tiger Day as a specific day to allow for those collaborations to happen. The goal of that was to bring multi-age kids together, give no scheduling conflicts, and allow teachers to have the freedom to do stuff together. We learned from feedback from teachers and from the community that they felt strongly that those collaborations happen authentically and organically, and we didn't really need to set aside a specific day for that. So our plan for this year is just an evolution of Tiger Day, where those collaborations will continue to happen, but on the teacher schedules and where it fits in curriculum. And that's opportunities where we can highlight all the things I talked about, the ITAD, the multi-age, the grade level things. We can also bring in more community connections and parents in for things. So it's just another evolution that when you live and learn through something, you take feedback, we can always make ourselves better. So those are all the areas that we're focused on this year for class design.
Thank you, Carrie. That was a great introduction. I'm going to speak next about the master schedule and calendar. I would like to give a shout out to John. I feel like every time Carrie and I go to talk about scheduling, John's a guru for scheduling, and we could sit down for hours at a schedule, look at it, and we're scratching our heads. John comes in and 10 seconds later we have a schedule. So certainly he has an eye for it. And actually, speaking of schedules and ITAD, we did have some of our staff members this year help out with our scheduling when we looked at ITAD. And as far as scheduling goes, one thing we're really proud of is, as Kerry mentioned, we've had ITAD, we've had the house system, we've had multi-age teaming, but every year it tweaks a little bit, we make a change, we bring it to life a little bit differently, and that's from teacher feedback, that's from student feedback, that's from parent feedback, and that's something we're proud of where we've been, but we're even more proud of where we're going to go. So one of the things we're particularly excited about is with our new schedule, we're able now to do an ITAD for 3 periods in a row. So for continuous afternoon, we have from, say, 11:55 all the way to dismissal, where one day a week, one of our specialist teachers has that period open to offer those extended interdisciplinary activities and lessons and co-teaching. So we're super excited about that. Our goals are to examine ways in which changing the master schedule can provide additional opportunities to differentiate and meet student needs. So how are we going to do that? As I just mentioned, we're removing the traditional elementary day blocks. So in years past, we've had an ELA block, we've had a math block, we've had a content, which is social studies and science block. We've now removed that from the schedule. Yes, we're still teaching English language arts, math, social studies, science. It's just not a 90-minute block here or 45-minute block. That really allows our teachers now to say, you know what, I know a first grade teacher is going to be available at this time with a class or one of my multi-age teaming classes. They can come together and they don't have that barrier of a block. Say a first grade class is now with math and a fourth grade class might be social studies or science. They have that ability within the day to be flexible to change their schedule around. And it also gives the flexibility for our support staff. Once we remove this is an ELA block or this is a social studies block, that enables our support staff, our AIS teachers to be able to push in and take students from different grade levels because once again, there's not that barrier of, okay, an AIS teacher is going to visit this group for math or they're going to visit this group for ELA at this time with this grade level. So we're really excited about that. And of course, to take advantage of those longer stretches of the day. We're also super excited to, as Kerry mentioned, all these great spaces that we have. Now we're collaborating, we're doing interdisciplinary work. We have these larger spaces, whether it's our newly renovated multi-purpose room, where we have a lot of our assemblies and a lot of our house events, or whether it's this magnificent library, or the Tiger's Den, which that renovation took place last year. So giving our teachers the space to be able to collaborate before school or after school. The Tiger Den is like a hub for collaboration. Teachers can go there, meet, they can share materials, they can share ideas, they can do their planning. So we have the space now, and now we can deliver on all these ideas. Something we're really, this is the schedule, and I didn't tell the high school we're going to talk about this, so I'm going to let you guys in on it now.
It's in there too, there's two, so we're both talking about it, because I think we're both proud of it.
Yeah, as we talk about, we want to give our students different experiences, and especially multi-age, and I think all of our schools do that inside their schools. But there's a special happening this year with high school students and third and fourth graders at CET, which I really think is magnificent. So I'm going to read what I wrote here. The Leaders of Tomorrow Mentorship Program is a multi-age collaboration between high school students and CET. This collaboration brings high school volunteers to the elementary school to guide and teach our third and fourth grade students through activities focused on leadership, character building, and preparing our students for their transition to middle school and beyond. This is a clever use of the High School Tiger Tuesday and the new block-free CET schedule. This innovative scheduling allows high school volunteers the opportunity to come to CET to engage with our students. These 90-minute visits will take place once a week. High school students plan a mini lesson, which is delivered during lunch. Then they spend recess engaging with third and fourth graders, and then return to the third and fourth grade classes to follow through with those activities. So now with our innovative scheduling, we're able to have high school students who decide on a Tiger Tuesday, and last I heard, there's somewhere between 60 and 70 high school students who are interested to come to CT, which I think is absolutely amazing, to come interact with our third and fourth graders, to be models for them. They're going to be designing the lessons. They get to teach those lessons and then engage in activities at lunchtime. One of the things we're always looking to improve and change is our students' experience during lunch and give them different activities. So as you know, across elementary school, we have students who love our blacktop area, our fields. They like to play tag. Some of them like to do artwork or even read a book. But this is going to give them yet another experience during lunchtime and during their recess time, and they get to interact with the older kids who they look up to. So what a wonderful experience for our high school students to be able to shine, and for our third and fourth graders to have students look up to. And then what I really love is this carries over into the classroom. Once again, flexibility in schedule. Our third and fourth grade teachers can move what they were going to do in the afternoon into the morning or to another day to allow that multi-age teaming from the high school back down to the elementary school.
Nicely done.
Thank you, Carrie.
So we're going to move into grading and assessment systems at CET. And to me, this is the most timely and kind of logical progression of goals. Because as you know, we talked a lot last year about, over the last 2 years, about the shift in instruction in literacy, especially in grades K through 2. We spent last year examining, piloting, researching, and finally selecting new literacy programs for K1 and 2 who are using Hegarty, phonemic awareness, bridge to reading, and bridge to writing. And brand new to 3rd and 4th grade is the Spelling Connections program. So we looked at practice, then we examined and we chose program, and now we're looking at assessments and reporting. So for us, our multi-year vision, and this is something that Craig and I have talked about and didn't want to jump the gun on, because if you do it too quick, then you're backpedaling, but we are perfectly set up right now because of the work we've done over the past few years to be looking over the next few years to design a more effective reporting system for our students. Something that has students vested and interested in understanding what a grade means, as well as embracing a growth mindset so that they can see in themselves the growth that they have made even before mastery, like the little mini steps that you make that show that you have made progress. You don't get that from our current report card. You look at it, it's a 1, 2, 3, or a 4. Children don't understand what that is. But we'd really like to look at something that creates a vested interest in the students, but also is more meaningful to parents. A reporting system that the parent looks at that and they really get an idea of where their child is and what they're doing. We feel that we're really in a great position to be able to do that right now because we are implementing many new assessments, and the assessments drill down into very specific skills, not just reading or reading comprehension, but phonemic awareness, blending, vowel sounds, digraphs. These assessments are so much more specific. So now we can show growth, not just my reading grade is a this, but I'm at this level here and my next step is this level. So we're really excited about implementing our new literacy assessments aligned with our instructional practice and our new literacy programs. We would like to pilot something like the concept of a badge book for a few different math standards this year in a few different grades, starting with math and allowing children, when I say a badge book, what that is something where a child, you would take a standard for math, and if mastery is here and a child starts here, there's baby steps to mastery where a child can actually go in and put a sticker in and be like, I went from here to here, I showed growth, I know where I need to be next. Very focused, very targeted. So in that we will be develop an assessment and feedback philosophy. We're also really excited about our literacy instruction committee for K through 4, where we will continue to get input from teachers and the community to make sure that we are delivering the best possible literacy instruction K through 4. So our steps for this year, this is really an information gathering year for us to that end goal and end vision of a different reporting system. So we plan to be gathering feedback from faculty and families on what our current practices are, asking questions like what type of feedback are you getting, what feedback is helpful, what could make our system of feedback better, so that we can move forward with that multi-year vision of creating a new reporting system, again, that students are invested in and can see and they can understand, as well as parents being able to have a much clearer picture of exactly where their child is and where they need to be and what steps they need to take to get there. So for me personally, it sounds kind of nerdy, but I am so excited about this next step and the evolution of instruction into practice and program into assessments and reporting.
Yeah, definitely an exciting time, Kerry. As Stephen mentioned, this year our district has a 4th goal, and that is what success means in school. So this is something we're grappling with and thinking about right now. The multi-year vision is stronger communication and transparency and involvement with the CT community and families, and that comes in many different shapes, sizes, and forms. Our goals for our individual school. We want to increase family engagement at CET, and that's for all of our families. We want to make sure that every family, regardless of their background, they're comfortable with CET, they're comfortable with the communication, they're in our school. When they come to their school, they want to be there, and they're seen by their children in school, which we think is really important. We're going to work on a definition and philosophy of what success means at CET. We'd like to highlight our student successes. We're really proud last year. One of the advantages of Tiger Day last year was during our Tiger Day assemblies and performances and assemblies, we were able to highlight a lot of our students, whether that was reading a piece of literature they had written, whether it was, say, some poetry reading, or maybe it was singing or acting or gymnastics or even martial arts. It's wonderful for students to have that opportunity to get in front of their peers and be highlighted for a strength they have or something that they truly enjoy. We also spend a lot of our house time, the individual houses, of highlighting different students, especially our 3rd and 4th graders get to highlight as they model for our younger students, and of course we highlight the relationships that they build. Another goal is students should share points of pride and accomplishments aligned with the growth mindset. So how are we going to get all that done? One of the things we'd like to do is really focus on a discussion, and that discussion is going to be not only with our staff, but with the students and also the parents in our community. We're going to talk about what practices would best increase family engagement at CET. I think we're really fortunate to have a very strong PTA in our building, very active PTA leadership who we lean on a lot. So working with our PTA to get some ideas and to help with that outreach into the community. And also to think about what are we doing right now that works and what are we doing right now that needs to be improved. We're going to do surveys to our faculty and to our parents, more frequent teacher communications. Hopefully our families have seen this already, but our teachers are going to be communicating via newsletter, via email. Some of them do social media, Instagram, Twitter. So taking the classroom experience and delivering it into the home. And of course, utilize the interest and passions of parent volunteers to enhance our curriculum. One of our staff members in the district has compiled a volunteer list, and we had started to use that last year with bringing volunteers from the community into our classrooms, and many of our teachers just reach out to the parents and caregivers in their class and ask them to come in, whether it's to share a story or whether it's to talk about their profession or one of their passions or one of their interests, and what greater feeling for a child than to see their parent or caregiver in front of their class. So these are some of the things that we've captured, but we want to continue to do so and expand upon at CET. All right.
Thank you, Gary. Great.
Neil?
As you can imagine, I do have a question. Well, among others, among many, but I guess my question, and it really goes for all 3 schools, and I'm just trying to understand how, and I know members of the community and parents who want to understand this as well, is how the work that you are doing, that's very innovative and exciting work, connects with what people, parents and community members, will consider as, quote, the standards of instruction that come out of the state of New York. I just pulled it up. It's dated 2017 for ELA. That's just the one I pulled out. And it gives, a 1st grader should know this, a 3rd grader should know this in reading and writing and etc. So what I'm concerned about, and this probably goes back to the question of the assessment and the assessment tools that we're going to use, combined with the innovative multidisciplinary teaching and ICAD, etc. How will we know, and how will parents know, that their children have attained what they need to attain. Now, some of it, I realize from what you said, is because when we go back to the slide before that, right, when we're talking about grading and assessment and designing a system of grading and assessment that can more granularly show the student's success, right? We expect that parents and students will understand how they progress towards the ultimate objective of what we'll call success in instruction. But I'm just wondering, and it's really for all the schools, how those things tie in, because some parents are just going to do what I did, and they're going to say, hey, how do I know in first grade my kid can do that? And how do you tie that in, and how do you intend to communicate to the CET community or the PVC community or the high school community that that's in here and we haven't forgotten about it?
All right. I'd just like to start, and I know Kerry's going to want to share too. We're not leaving the standards. We never have. Just because we're teaching across disciplines and different areas of curriculum doesn't mean we're not meeting the standards. As you know, Neil, I've taught for a really long time. When I first started teaching at CET, it was all interdisciplinary. You get your standards, you know exactly what you're teaching. At the end of the day, right, it's not changing the standards or not teaching to the standards, it's just changing your instruction. And I think everybody in the room could agree, when you have students who are learning something that's highly engaging, it's going to stick. When you're teaching something that's hands-on, that might include, say, math and science at the same time, or let's say ELA and social studies, and the students find something that's of high interest to them, you're still teaching to that standard, it's just delivered in a different way. So in my book, I've always said this, if students are excited about learning and they're engaged, learning is going to happen. And we have reporting devices that are going to show that to parents, but also communication is key, right? Anytime we do something, the communication piece among ourselves and to parents is paramount. And I think that's one of the reasons why that's one of our goals this year, is to make sure that parents are understanding what exactly is going on inside the classroom.
And I was going to say, so CET's had a standards-based report card before I even came to CET. So the standards are right there. So when we talk about what we're doing well, it's that we have a standards-based report card. So there's no denying that we're covering those New York State standards. What can we do better is when I'm a parent and I see that my child got a 2 in an ELA standard. As a parent, you might be, I have no idea, what does that 2 mean? What do they need to do to improve? What should we be working on? What is the next step to get to a 3, right? So our goal is to take a standards-based report card, which is kind of what most districts use, and make that better, make it more understanding. So now I'm taking that same standard that's on the report card, and in my vision for the future of CET and assessment and reporting is take that standard and break it down into scaffolded steps, almost like a rubric for each standard. So if I'm making this up as I go along, adding to 100 is a standard on a 2nd grade report card. So you might have a child who can do to 25. And then they work at that skill and they work on that and they practice that, and now they're at 50. They can add to 50. And then they can add to 75. So when I'm a parent now and I'm still seeing that same standard, that the end goal is that they can add through 100, as a parent and as a student, I'm seeing those steps. So to me, our vision and our plan is, we'll drill deeper into the standards so that parents clearly understand where their child is and what the next step is. But I think the fact that we are still committed to all the New York State standards is evidenced by even our current report card, because it is standards-based. So it shows that we are teaching all the New York State standards for that grade, for that subject that we need to. I would like it to be more clear and more useful to a parent.
So just so we can understand, and I guess having been on the board for a long time, I recall when the big thing in this district was development of curriculum maps.
I'm sorry, what?
Curriculum maps, where we said, okay, here are the standards, here are the evidences, here are the materials that will be used to help instruct in that area. And I know that what some parents did, perhaps many parents at the time, said, all right, well, how's this happening? Is my child in 4th grade reading historical fiction, and are they getting this that's on that map, and are they using these or similar exemplars? But it sounds like what you're talking about is something a little bit different, because you're not going to be looking at what I'll call a static curriculum map, but you're going to be looking at different teaching strategies and structures and interdisciplinary, but as long as the end result is that those competencies, those skills that are in the standards that are set forth by the state are met, we know we're doing our job. The problem is, obviously, some people will want to look at that chart and say, where is that? And this is a lot more amorphous, so I'm just suggesting there's got to be a way to gain understanding or to give understanding to students, parents, and of course us.
That's an important. I was just going to add that something just kind of like a concrete way to separate it out for parents too, outside of like the EduSpeak world. Standards are not curriculum, so a lot of times when you go to the state website and you see a scope and sequence for a particular subject, a parent might think, well, that's the curriculum, and it's not. Local districts write the curriculum based on that set of standards, and that can sometimes maybe just be kind of a simple clarification for people as a starting point, just to understand that that's not actually curriculum and that we write the curriculum to meet those standards.
I also think that it's really important, I'll answer this question now, so this way we can all go home a little earlier. The standards are the floor, right? They're not the ceiling. And I think what our colleagues are talking about is how to infuse important skills that aren't in the standards but are important to life into a learning experience. And I think that's really important, whether it's the behaviors that promote learning or whether it's things that made up our old profile of a graduate, right? Like the communication piece, the collaboration piece. We're responsible for teaching those skills also, and the social emotional skills. And what the research clearly shows is when you infuse those things together, social emotional skills, content-based learning that promotes standards mastery, as well as some of those other things that people used to call soft skills, that's where kids have the best experience and experience the most growth.
And I want to say, we talked about last year being that year of exploring program. We've always talked about at CET that it's not so much, it's the approach, it's the instructional practices, and it's the meeting those standards. But when we were picking our program for K1 and 2, there was a lot of thought and discussion. I can remember sitting with Steve and John and Craig and even Laura and Rachel and talking about, okay, so we have this, we've now are going to select this program that we feel extremely confident is meeting every single one of those standards. It's teaching phonemic awareness, then it's teaching phonics, then it's teaching the letters and sounds, right? But then there was that constant dialogue of, but how do we make that engaging? How do we still foster a love of reading and a love of writing while making sure that we're covering those skills? Because anybody can take out a workbook and say, do page 4, okay, now we've checked that skill. Kids will not love reading and writing if that's the only avenue they have. So we were very careful in selecting a program that we can confidently say is meeting all the standards and preparing our children to be successful readers, at the same time as still building in that innovation and that time for creativity and passion and love for reading and writing. So one is, we're not doing one in place of another. It's not this or that. It's how do we make sure that we are doing all of the things we need to do to responsibly say, yes, our children are getting these skills, but still foster that love and passion. And I think finding a balance is not the easiest thing, but that's why we took so long to make sure, and we had discussions constantly about how do we ensure that we're not losing one for the other. So there a lot of thought went into that and into the selection of the programs we're using now at CET.
Thank you.
Shane.
That was a good explanation.
Yeah, I wanted to, it's on, double down on Neil's comment and add that what I'm interested in learning once this is all figured out is as we think through curriculum implementation or redesigning instruction, assessing the performance of that curriculum in relation, not just how students are learning, but also how are our students doing in comparison to other districts. Like that, I mean, that's one of the ways you can assess how impactful the student curriculum is. So just doubling down on what Neil has said, and to say that we need some assessments, not just on student performance for the sake of sharing with parents, but also to say that whether we're doing better or not better than other districts.
You want to go ahead and talk about
I just want to commend you on hearing community feedback last year, because in your goals here, when I see you saying you want to commit to stronger communication, transparency, and involvement. That was some of the frustration I think we heard from the community last year, and that you're just tackling it head on. I just want to commend you for that. The idea of surveying faculty and parents and moving forward with that, to see that as like your 2025, 2026 action items, again, super commendable. And then more frequent teacher communications to families via newsletters, emails, social media, etc. That was some of the feedback that we all heard as a community. So it's good work. And yeah, thank you.
So my question is
I'll
about,
turn it on.
oh, sorry, thank you. My question is about team teaching, which, I think we've talked about a lot, and it's great to see sort of how that has grown and expanded from the earliest iterations. One of the things that you, I think, mentioned was sort of like trying to determine the impact, and that was something that you'd be looking at, sort of what the impact of team teaching is. So I was curious about just, like if you already have developed some measures that you're using to evaluate, or like what you would be looking at in terms of, to some degree it's like, I don't know, to me it sounds like it maybe is a little bit of an intangible, but if you're evaluating, you have thought about something that I haven't thought about yet, so I'd love to hear about it.
So because it's so brand new, I mean, this model is new for the 25-26 school year, and to date, what I've been gathering is just, it's anecdotal. It's parents leaving back to school night saying, that was such a cool experience. We were so engaged in hearing both the teachers. We're excited for our child to be a part of that. What we will do as the year progresses is keep checking in with parents, asking them, how was your experience? Keep checking in with teachers. Is it what you thought it was going to be? How can administration support you further? What would you like to see added, changed, evolved? Asking students, how did you feel about having connections with the two classes? I mean, my tiny little goal in my head was, by January of this year, if I ask a student in a team taught class, who's your teacher, I want them to say both names. Because then to me, they're feeling that connection, that comfort, that level of, I just said all the words, all that stuff, with two teachers instead of one. Or that they identify kids in both classes as people that they, because parents are always saying, I'm hoping that there's going to be at least one or two kids from last year's class in their next year's class, right? I hear that all the time. Well, now we've just doubled that. So now if you're feeling connected to both classes and both groups of kids, I'll know. So I don't have a formal matrix for that right now, to be perfectly honest, but I will be, that's why it says like the ongoing discussion, the ongoing reflection, and asking for feedback from parents, students, and teachers alike.
Okay, that's great.
And if I could just add, Monica, I don't want to oversimplify, but what I'd like to see is, in a word, differentiation. When you have two instructors in a classroom, that gives quite an opportunity to differentiate at different levels. It also gives students the opportunity to work with other students they may not necessarily have the opportunity to. And also, speaking of opportunity, what a wonderful time to then bring in our specialist teachers who have that ability for ICAD. So now not having 2 teachers, you might have 3 or 4 teachers in a room. And we always know, as you lower those ratios, increases student engagement. That teacher contact time, that instructional, contact time with educator and student is very important. So just thinking tonight, I would say my measure is going to be, how is that material differentiated, and are the students benefiting from having 2 instructors or 3 instructors in that classroom instead of just the 1?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad to hear that, because I think that especially being in a smaller district as we are, I think this is something that we're always looking to figure out, is how we can do, like what you're talking about is actually like sort of scaling up small group work in like sort of like a larger classroom way, which I think is really interesting. And then also just the reality of that we have these cohorts of kids who are in class with the same kids for 13 years.
Right.
And so to be able to have those larger groups, I think just socially, emotionally, in terms of relationships, is a really it's great that we have like the capacity to make that happen. So thanks, those are helpful answers, and I appreciate that.
I just wanted to follow on, similar to the team teaching. I think we'll all be excited to hear how that evolves throughout the year and how that goes. I was really interested in hearing about the changes with AIS and some of the flexibility that's being added in there, and I guess thinking about how evaluating that over this year and seeing how that may change things and help improve outcomes for our students. So thinking about that as we go back and look at some of these things.
It's already exciting, and we're already seeing like it's almost like a light bulb went off. That for years we've been doing it. Okay, this grade goes for intervention at this time. This grade goes for intervention at this time. But you could have a 2nd grader with 1st grade skills. You could have a 3rd grader with 2nd grade skills, and we're thinking to ourselves, like, why are our groups based on grade and not targeted skills, right? So that flexibility, we've already, like our AIS teachers are excited because they're like, no, I just assessed this child here and they're at this level. So now instead of just being like, and even within, so we have 3 AIS ELA teachers. It used to be that I would take the lower low, I'll take the middle low, and I'll take the higher low. Now it's, I'm gonna take the group that's working on this skill. I'm going to take a group that's working on this skill. And it's just so much more targeted, and in my head it just makes so much more sense that I'm, in retrospect, like, how did we not think of this sooner? Like, how did we not realize that this is the way that we meet our kids' needs? But the vision from the district, the flexibility to look at schedules different, the flexibility to look at configurations differently has just opened a lot of doors. So everything that you asked about, we will continue to monitor. We're going to look at where their benchmarks are, but to me, it just makes so much sense to target that instruction based on a specific skill, and not just because you were born within the same year, so to speak, as the child next to you.
And what I like about it is that experience through our AAS with targeted skills, that's not the first time these students are seeing a multi-age group. So it's not, they've been doing this now for 3 or 4 years, so it's nothing new. So, hey, guess what? I'm reading with the students of different grade levels. I'm doing a STEM activity with students of different grade levels. So I think actually the way it was rolled out, right? Superintendent Walker, nice job. I think the way it was rolled out was actually genius, because now we have these students who are getting, say, skill work, and they're working with students of different age groups, and they're not thinking twice about it because it's what they've been doing.
That's a very good point. There's not that stigma of I'm in 3rd grade, but I have to go at the 2nd grade time. It's just the group that's working on the same thing as me is going at this time.
Thank you.
Totally going to ask this like super detailed question, but like, so that used to happen at the elementary school during the WIN period. So now if you're pulling different grades at different times, how are you making sure that those students aren't missing?
So because of the flexibility in the schedule, and not have, like it used to be, if I took, so say 2nd grade was doing ELA block, but it was 3rd grade WIN, and I was pulling them from that. Now a teacher may know I have a child who at this time is going for this skill, so they will do something else in class that's not going to, that if that child were in the room during that time, they may not benefit the way that they're going to benefit from being in a small group for targeted instruction. But it's no longer that, oh wait, you're pulling for ELA during math. A teacher can say, I know this child needs to go for this period for ELA instruction, so they might do different ELA instruction. So they're not missing that new instruction that would be at their level. And that, taking away the barriers in the master schedule, has allowed for that.
Thank you. Phil, do you have any questions? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I remember that we were supposed to start with you in student voice.
No, that's all right. No, I don't have any questions. I just keep thinking about, like, because I've been here since pre-K, so I keep thinking about how just interesting this sounds compared to my experience in CET, but it all, like, makes sense coherently, so it sounds good.
And make sure you have a question for PVC.
Thank you, Carrie and Craig.
Thank you.
Team PVC.
All right, thanks for having us tonight. So obviously, we're going to be talking about our goals, just like our colleagues before us. And just to give you a little spoiler alert, the high school's going to do the same. That being said, I think you'll see from our overview of our goals this evening that we said we were going to do something, 2 years ago. And tonight you see how that has further evolved. And what's been so beautiful about this journey that we've been on at the middle school and also our district is that as the roadway becomes more evident ahead of us, new ideas are infused into the attainment of the vision map. And with that being said, you're going to see some very familiar themes this evening.
So our three areas of focus are fostering the pursuit of passion among students and staff by developing innovative and inspirational classes, schedules, and learning experiences. That second one is promoting future-focused teaching and learning through the development of shared philosophy on assessment, grading, and feedback. And lastly, promoting the success of each individual through the prioritization of connections, a sense of belonging, and thoughtful risk-taking. And so those three, right, are going to sound very familiar as it obviously aligns with the district's vision map and our goals from last year. And like we said earlier, we're just going to kind of expand. So they're all related to the district goals, the vision map, and the ongoing mission. And those next few slides will kind of show you how. Yeah. So at PVC this year, we are working to enhance our interdisciplinary course offerings, specifically in the area of humanities and in social studies and English, particularly in 7th and 8th grade, but as well as our 5th and 6th grade blocks, of course. So we've made some logistical adjustments to kind of enhance that passion-based learning experience as well. So the number of meetings, the length of time has been all adjusted a little bit to kind of maintain engagement amongst our students in those passion pursuit areas and that passion-based learning approach. And so we're excited for some upcoming town hall meetings in the next couple of weeks with all of our students to share what their passion pursuit journey could look like and all the kind of protocol that goes along with that. And we certainly wouldn't be the middle school we are without prioritizing that social emotional learning and growth. Also through our mixed grade advisories, and we're talking a lot about mixed grades at CET, so again, the kids are now starting to come in with that familiarity, which is nice. So we had our first advisory meeting today, that was super exciting, and the 6th graders in my group felt like rock stars because they were showing the 5th graders the ropes, and so that kind of energy is exciting. So a lot of our advisors are looping with at least one grade level of students too, so in terms of those trusted adults and developing those relationships and enhancing those relationships, I think we're really hitting the mark there. So really just building on the pre-existing relationship. And I think in regards to student support systems, we're going to continue to develop our MTSS protocols and those structures to ensure we are meeting the needs of each and every student, meeting them where they are.
So again, we don't want anyone to forget that while we have these wonderful goals, we also are paying very close attention to the foundational pieces of what makes an education. And we're going to talk a little bit about the curriculum and assessment piece as well.
Yeah. So always obviously keeping a keen eye out on any opportunities that we have to integrate learning for all of our PVC students. And so As a team, we are meeting with our teacher teams, starting regularly this week, to discuss those ideas of opportunities for interdisciplinary learning and integrated curriculum, so that we can continue to build those bridges to help develop more cohesive and integrated experiences for all of the students. The interdisciplinary courses such as the PE, Wellness and Fitness, and Humanities obviously are up and running, so we're proud of those collaborations. We know it's powerful, right? There's power in connections, we value that, and the critical thinking at the middle level is crucial. We want to continually be working to maximize the potential of all of our students. And I think those are great opportunities to do that. And I think going back to Neil's question before too, right? We know when we start to plan for this interdisciplinary learning, we start at the floor, right? We start with those standards, and we start by crosswalking those standards and looking for those opportunities to say, hey, where's my inroad here? What connections can we make? And I think that's something that we kind of do at that planning stages and those when we start to design courses and start to look for those opportunities too.
And if you recall last year, our teachers spent a lot of time building these units and doing them thematically. We also know that one of the resources that were available to them at PBC Middle School for the 7th and 8th grade teachers was 5th and 6th grade teachers who had more experience with interdisciplinary planning and development of interdisciplinary instruction and learning. So going back to them this year and taking an inventory of all of the experiences throughout our school, 5 through 8, and asking what else can we do, what other wonderful units or projects can be implemented. And what this has created is now we're already seeing, I mean, we're in the 3rd week of school, we're already seeing things developing on the peripheral. So imagine planting grass seed on your lawn, but now you're seeing your neighbor's lawn get a little greener because the seed has kind of gone over there. We see our specials teachers aiming to team up more with some of the content area people and floating interdisciplinary ideas all around. So we're very happy to see that, and we think it's that idea germination process that really is going to lead us to the best place. And especially in the middle school, you know, it's not just enough that you have an interdisciplinary unit or multiple interdisciplinary units. You have to build them in a way that you also keep in mind all the different learning styles, and I will say to you, especially the kinesthetic aspects of learning. Next slide. Last year we came before this board, and the year before we talked a little bit about reforming science at the middle school, and I think we're in a really wonderful place. The things that we presented last year are now in effect. We have a 5 through 8 science approach that's more diversified, more hands-on, and I want to be very clear about this because these are the words we used last year, and I don't want you to forget them. More phenomenon-based. Okay, so living environment is no longer taught at the middle school, and our teachers feel it's for the better, that our kids are more engaged, they're more involved in inquiry, experimentation, questioning, and acting like real scientists, not just people preparing for a living environment test. And that's really all I got to say about science right now because it's only September 18th. Okay, but if I can come back in November, I'll do it.
Yeah.
All right, Algebra for All. That was also launched. We sat here last year and we talked to you about our vision for this. And again, what we see for Algebra for All is the retooling of 5 through 8 math approach. And again, the standards were a big basis of that, but not just the standards. It was also what are the critical understandings, what are the cross-cutting concepts that had to be focused on, as well as what are the skills, thinking skills that we want to foster in students starting in 5th grade, so that every child has the best possibility of finding confidence in mathematics in the 8th grade. And this goes with taking a critical look, and that's one of the things that we'll be doing this year, at what kind of assessments we're utilizing in that area, in science and in other places, but especially in algebra.
I think just adding to that too, we were very cognizant of making sure we're meeting kids where they are, and some folks felt a little bit more ready for this algebra opportunity than others, and so offering that summer program was super helpful to make sure that they had a little readiness check-in in August, and I think kids are coming in feeling confident and ready for that rigor. And I think lab periods, we were able to make a master scheduling adjustment as well, so that just about every 8th grader has an additional callback period throughout the 6-day cycle with their algebra teacher. So they are getting that, again, small group kind of targeted instruction for enrichment or mediation, what do we call that? As needed, extra support as needed. So I think that's definitely a positive in terms of rising to the occasion for them. Electives are exciting. So we began our journey into exploring elective course offerings at the middle school last year with our staff. And we really started kind of with some big, broad questions at faculty meetings, like if you could teach anything that you were passionate about to your students, what would it be? Or, what do you wish you could have always taught, but there's never, time in the day or it doesn't fit into the curriculum? So those big questions. And they started to really run with it. And we were pleasantly surprised by a lot of those responses. And so we continued to drill down over the course of the year to start saying, okay, let's set some learning objectives for that idea. Let's think about a course description. What kind of interactions or projects would that lead? Or what kind of performance activities would take place? And so we carved out that time to kind of revisit the brainstorms as we went. We formed a lot of collaborative teaching groups and teams, which is really fun. And at this point, I think we have a lot of templates in the works. I think close to about 18 elective courses sketched out right now for hopefully a little tidbit in December for a little bite-sized experience there. So we're excited. They have some very catchy course title names, as you can imagine. So we're excited to share a course catalog with the middle schoolers, and of course, look for their agency, look for their input, and choose, or at least their top 3 choices, what they want to do, what they're, excited to delve into. And then we'll hope to, schedule them into these unique experiences by interest. And we'll kind of launch that up this year and then build on that for that intersession idea later in the year.
And what we really hope that would be gained out of this is obviously by running this pilot day in December that we would have some really good feedback on what works, what needs improvement. And then what the other building leaders are discussing, and this is where it really gets great, is how do we potentially offer some of these experiences cross-building, which would really be wonderful, and maybe even have older kids teaching younger kids or arranging to guide younger students through the learning process or the exploration process. And again, it's really exciting. Unfortunately, my class won't be able to run, and a lot of kids signed up for it, and it was axe throwing. Great. So again, the passion-based learning, we continue, which is our 3rd year of the Passion Pursuit, and we look forward every year. But this again goes back to touching upon the master scheduling tweaking. The creation of the 0 period last year needed to be tweaked. We got feedback from faculty and staff and students about what would be better, how would time be allocated for this learning. And the pageant will be earlier this year, and therefore sometime in April instead of May and June. And that's what our students said was better for them. They didn't need as much time, and plus once the state testing rolls around, it made it a little stressful for them, they said, so that's what they wanted to do. And our faculty agreed that the 0 period could be narrowed down from 55 minutes to like about 35 minutes, and throughout the months of the year. So what else do you want to say, Ms. Kelly?
I think you hit it.
All right.
I think we're good.
And I just want to go back to the assessment piece, because I think in all of these things, even in the passion pursuit endeavor, there is an assessment. And I don't know, to almost question how we would measure it against another school, because it's a type of assessment that's more reflective in thought. There's a rubric for kids to reflect, and it's the metacognition rubric, the middle level metacognitive rubric that we use to ask them. So I don't know how we would take that data and compare it to what other schools are doing in the same way, or if they even have one. Yet the data we do pay attention to, whether it be the reading scores, the Ren Star scores, and other local assessments, is still very important. But I would say that not everything that's important can be measured in the same way. Like, for instance, when I see the kids coming down the hallway, some of them have a lot of hair. I can't count how many hairs they have, but I love them all. You know what I mean? And so I think it's really, really important to differentiate that not everything can be measured the same way.
I think for our middle schoolers too, right, that self-reflection piece and going back to the behaviors that promote learning are crucial, right? They need to think about themselves when they can be a little self-centered at times anyway, so that shouldn't be too hard. But, thinking about themselves and how did I operate within this protocol or within this journey and within this experience. And now that, like, our 8th graders, right, have been doing this for 3 years, like, they can compare from themselves from year to year too, which is kind of being interesting to kind of see and see how that evolves. In terms of facelifts, though, we also did a little minor facelift to our lab periods at PVC, and so we are making lab stands for learning and behaviors now, with really an increased lens on executive functioning, and a lot of that has been born from our study skills experiences at PVC, and so we continue to focus on personalized learning experiences there. It offers a great amount of flexibility to the teams, and we're excited about that because when we have that flexibility, right, that's when the creative stuff comes out. And so we are really looking at just what benefits kids best, how do we personalize that learning, maybe even backing off from a lot of the screen time that may be taking place during lab and exploring some other options there, being really intentional about our screen use and about our program use, and again, how often we are collecting that data too. So it ties very well into the passion pursuits, right, with, hey, how am I going to manage my time? How am I organizing myself? And so we want to obviously use this to make sure that all PVC students have those foundational skills as well that come along with the ES stuff.
And then if that wasn't enough, obviously this year's advisory, I think you could see the vision map in the advisory curriculum, as well as that this year's advisory has been informed by not just the vision map, but also the school climate data that we got last year. So when we look at a month dedicated to how do we create a sense of belonging, when we look at how do we give kids the opportunities to go into other people's spaces and take charge in terms of leadership in 7th and 8th graders pushing into 5th and 6th grade space, how do we stick with our middle school mission of helping kids regulate their emotions better, and also actively teaching and having kids apply the behaviors that promote learning. That's what you'll see in our advisory, while using all along the Connection Circle protocol, as well as other activities to promote this sense of togetherness and the social emotional growth that we want to see in our students. Last but not least, what does success mean?
And I think that is the big question, but I think, one of our unwritten goals, if you would, is, I think, directly related to climate and culture, and that is all about celebrating the small wins and the small victories along the way. And so I think all of that work comes down to that bigger question. So what does success mean, and what does that look like, particularly at the middle level? And so we're going to spend a good amount of time this year searching for those diverse responses to that big question. And so I think, like all things middle school, right, we really hope to focus in on that growth mindset around success and around assessment and feedback, and really all of that while working with the students to develop the ability to receive, give, and act on feedback, which can be really, really challenging for our age group. So we're going to work on that for sure. But we're also going to partner with our instructional coaches to consider ways to continue to embed that reflection piece into various aspects of learning. And obviously taking into consideration the whole child and that social emotional piece. And so I think the middle school is kind of a perfect place to reframe mistakes or errors, as we might call them, as an essential part of learning and growing. And I think we need to work on that together. So we're really excited for the future. We hope to continue to be really strategic and intentional about the evolution and the expansion of these goals. And I think we feel pretty confident that that's what's best for middle level learners at PVC.
and get them ready, set up for the next stage of their learning and beyond. One other thing I want to point out, and back to your question, which I really appreciate, is the fact that, we've built some of our own assessments, like the fast effective baseline assessment, which we could share with you in the next board report. That specifically tests in the 6th and 8th grade gives us a window into kids, the development of critical thinking skills. So I would love to know other schools that are doing that and compare our data to that. And I would love to share that report with the board next week. But I would say that when we look at what does success mean, we can't answer that question alone. Our kids have to also answer it. And we have to have their voices as part of that. And I know Nicole gets that because we've had endless conversations about that. Just truth be told, she didn't like the slide and I made it. And so, we debated it. There's so much there.
No, I liked that one.
The tiger's winking at you. I mean, come on. So, thank you for listening. We really appreciate it.
Phil, do you have anything? No. I wanted to just take it back 1 second to some of the concerns we heard last year out of the middle school regarding bullying. And while you're focused on assessments and interdisciplinary studies, maybe moving away from some of the social emotional learning that we were discussing in previous years, if you could just speak to how that's being addressed in the future of what's going to happen at PTC.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know if I would say it really took a back seat at all. I think it just comes out in different places, right? And so I think the advisory piece is huge, and I think those trusted relationships with adults is really a big piece. And I think going back to that climate and culture conversation from earlier, right? It's not just the adults, right? That's all about kids too. How do they feel in that sense of belonging? And I think we've taken their data from the student climate survey, and really, that's what informs our advisory curriculum and develops that. And things like Unity Day, right? We can celebrate those things and recognize that. Encouraging students to be allies. I think are conversations that are happening in the classroom and during lessons, and not just in these isolated pieces either, because we know the isolated stuff doesn't work. And if we're really going to practice what we preach and break down those silos, that it needs to be that overall, theme throughout everything that we're doing. And I think that's really kind of woven in, and I think that that's important to continue. And then we kind of, there's isolated incidents, we can obviously address those as needed.
Yeah, and I would say that, in middle school, you need a multi-tiered approach to dealing with any social-based problem. So advisory plays one role. Obviously, teacher training and vigilance plays another role. Our school support staff also plays a role, as well as the MTSS and the at-risk team. And I would say it again, I think that by and large, I would put PBC Middle School up against any other school, thinking that we have probably the least amount of hostility. And the hostility or the bullying or the social difficulties that we do experience, they seem very significant to our students because they're emotional, but they're not physical. And while we need to keep working on those things, helping kids get by it, when you look at these topics like creating an invincible mindset, bullying prevention, our multiple push-in lessons that our counselors are doing, I don't think there's any stone that we've left unturned. And then, when something happens, I would say that creating a positive climate in the realm of bullying prevention is a lot of firefighting, but also fireproofing. We have a program like this so we can fireproof, but you also have to respond when something does happen. And I think our kids, by and large, know right from wrong also. So I hope that answers your question, Madam President. Sorry, to retake that. I didn't want it.
So I wanted to thank you for the presentation, Michael and Nicole. On the assessment piece, and do you think you answered the question, actually? Because when you said that we have different assessments that no other district is doing, that's wonderful, that's great. And what we need to do is look at it from a holistic perspective. I don't think anybody will argue that using like a standard-based test score is the way to measure progress in learning, but it is a measure, right? And that while we're thinking about alternative assessments, that just adds to the mix, doesn't take away. Like, we still need to look at standards-based assessments as one data element in the universe of data that we're looking at for kids, because for good or bad, that is the standard language that we're using in New York, for example. And so it's one data element among many that we need to be looking at.
Did you say in New York?
Yeah.
I just didn't hear you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I have a question. Actually, I have two questions. Sorry, I keep not turning on the mic. I think I did. Okay, so thank you again. It's always a pleasure to hear how these things are changing and growing and just the progress over the last couple of years. One of the, just like starting with like a basic follow-up question, I think in terms of something you said, Nicole, just about being more intentional about screen use during lab time. I'm curious sort of like what that looks like right now, because I know, I don't know, but I understand that that lab time is often for students a time where they're doing some of their, regular like learning obligations, like their math programs and their Achieve and like reading and stuff like that. So when you're saying that there's a desire to sort of be like a little bit more intentional about screen use, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so a little bit more of this lessening perhaps of the amount of time required, or maybe we'd say, hey, 60 minutes of this over the course of the cycle. But now we're acknowledging, hey, maybe kids are going to spend an additional lab period in algebra, right? So they don't have as much time, so we don't want to, we don't want to keep those protocol the same, right? They need to just be adjusted. So that I think is ultimately it. So adjusting the amount of time or those criteria, right, that we would always say, these are the requirements. Giving flexibility to the teams also to say, hey, that's not really what we need to do this week. We're really focused on this interdisciplinary learning program and so our project, so we want to use that lab time and give all the students time to work on that together, because this is a perfect time for them to collaborate. We have them all in the same room at the same time, or in a few rooms at the same time. So, hey, can we put this aside and look at that next week, or can we double up, in weeks to come? And so giving teams, kind of empowering our staff to make those decisions for what's best for the team based on those learning outcomes, I think is kind of our goal.
Okay, yes, that actually, I think that lines up well with something I heard at back to school night last night for 8th grade. One of the ELA teachers was actually talking about how the focus was going to be on, for example, having 3 books, like a goal of reading like a certain number of books for this semester, or like whatever for this X period of time, and actually building projects around that independent reading, which again I thought was like sort of an interesting way to be using that independent time with like a little bit more focus and also a little bit more tangible, especially if everyone's, I know I had to provide a Ziploc bag for the book, so it's like I know it's going to school back and forth every day, so that's great to hear. The other question that I'm reflecting on is having spent the last few years going to as many of the passion project fairs as I possibly can, just to see what everybody's doing. I'm curious if you could talk a little bit sort of also about the evolution of that, not just in terms of, I think you talked a little bit and explained sort of the evolution of the dedicated time and how that time has now been refocused to better fit what students feel that they need in terms of how to prepare for those projects. So that sounds really positive, that feedback is being incorporated. I think my specific question is just about, so they're reflecting on like, how did this go? What did I learn? What did it feel like? I am curious if those sort of like reflective assessments on the Passion Project are they shared with families and parents? That's one question, just to sort of give that visibility to folks about like, what have we spent the whole year working on? Not everybody can come to those Passion Projects, right? Because it's like that one day for each grade, and it's during work hours, so it's, obviously school hours and work hours are the same, I get that. But I'm just curious about sort of like, what ways there are to sort of reflect back to families what that time and effort is going towards if you're not able to attend the sort of culminating capstone kind of like presentation. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's a great idea. I think we need to put some more thought behind that and what it could look like. We had a lot of conversations with kids so far too about, hey, can I record this and can I share it? And or you'll notice that when you come to the pageant, a lot of students had pre-recorded things, so it's too hard to play my guitar in the main lobby when I come in, or no one's going to hear it and appreciate it. But if I, use GarageBand and wrote my own music, maybe if you put the, earbuds in, you can hear it, or I can send it out ahead of time, or scan this QR code. So I think it's going to be a matter of maybe using the technology a little differently, but we can ask the kids too, I think, what, they want to do and how that wants, how we want to play that out. And I think we'll go from there. But I think, too, parents who came and families who visited were able to give some direct feedback, whether they wrote that down or not, and had conversations. And I think we also thought about what do kids want to do with that feedback, right? Like, did you look at it, right? How much time did you spend, processing it? Is that going to change, how you operated this year? And those will be conversations that we have at those town hall meetings coming up, too, as they start to kind of plan for it. But I think that's a good seed thought for us to really think about. Thank you.
Actually, I had just a thought that popped in about these, because now that this is the third year of doing these and having seen a lot of them and spoken to students who have done them in multiple years, how do we think about the students as they look at those projects as they go from one year to the next? And I talked to one student who her passion for this project last year was sort of an expansion of what it had been the year before, and for other students it's something totally new. And is that incorporated in at the beginning of the year as like they think back to what they did before, and did they want to continue with that, or are they interested in something else? Like, is that part of that process?
Absolutely, yeah. And that's, I think, probably the number one question we get is, do I have to change my topic? Or if I'm really passionate about this, can I stick with it? And so the answer is yes, but we asked for that like new element, or how are we going to expand on it? And so I know there were a lot of interviews done with experts in fields and things like that were not necessarily done year one last year, so that would be exciting. But I think, they asked, and interestingly enough, I think we did have a few students last year who asked if they could pursue the same topic or same idea, and then like even halfway through they were like, yeah, I'm tapped out on this, can I make a move? And they did, but okay, yes, but let's talk about that as part of your journey. So how did you know at what point you were saturated, or this was no longer, what you wanted to pursue? And so I think those conversations, and that's why it's so nice to be able to do the 0 period time in the advisory with that trusted adult who now you have a pre-existing relationship with. They often now this year will know a lot of what happened last year, even if they are in different grades than what the teachers teach. So that'll be exciting to have those conversations and of course, emphasize the agency there. But yeah, that is definitely part of our conversation with them from the get-go.
Did I do it? Thank you. So I teach capstone projects, which are essentially passion projects in college that are interdisciplinary. And so one of the questions I have is, it's always fantastic when a student comes and they're like, this is what I want, this is what I do, and it like lines up nicely. The word passion to me is it's very attractive to some people, but other people, if they're not like I've experienced when some people are very feel like it's a burden because they're not passionate, maybe they're mildly curious. It's like an interesting word. Like people have a different relationship with that.
Yeah, we try to mess around with the word, but mildly curious didn't go with it.
No.
It's curious as our synonym, especially with like 5th and 6th graders, right? Like curious is the word. Like, what do you wonder about? What do you want to know more about? I think that's important.
Yeah.
And that is another component here, Allison, and that is that one of the reasons why we want to keep this going is because our kids have been raised on electronic devices. And so there is an apathy to lots of things. Like, I'm not interested in anything. How about that? Well, we're going to find you something. Let's talk. And I think that's a big part of what we're doing, is to kind of break that apathy and understand that life is more than just going to school. Because you have to go to school. It's more than the video games. It's more than the telephone and the Snapchat. You should find something that makes you come alive. And you know what? It's okay to explore, to find that and make mistakes and say that's not the thing. But we're very confident that somewhere along the lines in our school system, that kids are going to find the thing that makes them come alive.
So that's fantastic. And I think my kids have been older, so I haven't really experienced this. So if it's not in place, I think this is a question I've heard from parents. So understanding what is the supports you have in place to help students identify that would be fantastic if that's not something that's being done. But, the other thing is like I think a lot of people in the community, they see all these different exciting projects that are going, and but then there's only so much time during the day. So before there was a question about, learning standards and things like that, when students are developing these passion projects, to what extent are we looking and like aligning them with one of the learning standards? Is this like kind of a standalone like cherry on top, or to what extent is it like really being deeply integrated and mapped onto our curriculum? Does that make sense? Because like I understand like with the question about the, how do we assess this? I mean, I know when I have these projects, then there's my learning goals from the class, but it's easier because it's course, but it's interdisciplinary. So it's like part of the time we've had to send this like map it out onto the various learning outcomes that we need in our program, but that takes time to figure it out.
So, go ahead, Nicole.
No, I was just saying, we haven't formally like written that out in terms of like the design, but I mean, when you think about, again, going back to the research standards, reading standards, writing standards, right? There's so much overlap, right, in those cross-cutting concepts, right? There's so much there. So I think it clearly does, but I think we've taken a more probably isolated view of just cherry on top in that regard, and to use your words, but I think, right, we very well could.
Yeah, and I think this is a very resilient approach to learning. It's saying if the kid likes to learn, therefore they're going to learn all the peripheral elements as well in order to achieve the goal of what they want to accomplish. Adding a known assessment here other than the reflective piece would probably be the death knell of such a project, because again, then it would be back to the game of school, and that's not what we want here.
And I think going back to our Tri-States visit, I think something that really stuck out to us, whatever that was, 2 years ago, right? When the group came and spoke to some of the kids said, well, we hate this. It became something, it became something else we had to do because it's a project. And so we've been paying so much attention to even the language we use around it, like on the new version of that, it doesn't say passion pursuit project, it just says passion pursuit. Like, we're trying to avoid that word project, because we don't want to play the game of school here. We really want you to just be passionate, right? Follow what you love, right? For the sake of learning and curiosity and all of that. So I think we're trying to be careful to continue with that engagement for sure.
So on that, I think that lends or can lead to somewhat of a conundrum, if you will, because I can see how making sure that those things of writing, research, and so on that you had described would be reflective in what kids do in their passion pursuit, if there are certain components that are part of it. And I realize, and particularly in the middle school grade, you don't want to stifle the enthusiasm by putting those in. I mean, and I think about this in relation or in comparison, if you will, to the Senior Choose project in high school, where there is a presentation, there is research, there is something other than that presentation, but the degree to which the student is expected to codify that research in a written, I'll call it research paper, in addition to what the PowerPoint and presentation is, kind of is separate from the assessment or part of the assessment of the student in that Choose presentation, but how do you, as you said, connect that to, well, how does that fit to a particular standard for any 12th grader? I'm sensing the same thing here, but I do know that in the past, and I think we had talked about this in Building Planning Council at various points, that there was a different feel, people have different feelings as to how valuable the passion pursuit was, depending on how much a student put into it and how much they could present. And I know one of the things that we had talked about was, reviewing that program, if I can call it that, to make sure that students are maximizing their participation, their enthusiasm, and their learning. And I don't know if that's something, as time goes forward, you'll be,
And I think
looking
that
at.
evolved a lot last year too. We had a lot of advisors and staff members who built in checkpoints, accountability measures, right, checklists, things of that nature. Because the first year we did it, we were like, all right, let's throw this against the wall and see what sticks here a little bit, right? But I think, again, go back to that intentionality, right? That second year, we know better, we do better. And so I think that was a lot of, I think, what kind of came out of that. And so I think so many of the students would probably report they felt better about it too. They felt better about their end product because they did put in that time. And they're able to look back at the behaviors of remote learning and say, yeah, I nailed that. That's exactly what I was doing. Or I went on this journey and I revisited. And so I think that's kind of the positive amongst a few.
And then
I think
I
what
just
you
want to say, tying that to Omar's points about assessment,
Yeah.
including self-assessment,
Yeah.
that would be very good for us to,
They all have.
I mean,
that
not us, but
Yeah.
us as a system, to
Well, I
see
think it
how,
goes-
how reflective they are. Because I know we've talked about high school level and middle school level, maybe elementary as well, students to be self-reflective. And,
And I think it goes back to Analy's question of what do we do with that data? Also, how do we share that? How do we analyze that? But Neil, to your point that, some kids put in different effort levels and energies, you're right. And I think they do that no matter where they are in academia,
Sure.
right? Whether on the athletic field or in art class. So, I think we want them all to be motivated. If someone's saying to you, here's 35 minutes of time, several times a month, to do whatever you like as long as it's learning, I think that's a great way to start motivating kids. Start getting them in the mindset of, I need to think about what it is about life that really interests me. Where do I want to go to explore? And I think it's more important now than ever in the history of humankind when we're talking about what the countervening forces are in the world, which is the fun, right? And if we can get kids turned on to different things here, maybe they'll spend less time on the screens. And I think that's super important.
I just want to add this one last component to it. I also think that the process in and of itself teaches students what types of learners they are. And to confront, to your point, like the passion, like I have a child that like she doesn't feel passionate about a lot. She likes stuff. She can not like stuff, but the process of all of that and developing, a response to like the anxiety of dealing with these things or the presentations or having to delve into all of that. And to have 35 minutes of unscheduled time promoted, like directed at learning, that process for students is, to have that at this level and not have to confront that later on in your academic career as a learner is such a gift. And it's not just the end product or the end project. I think the process, they learn so much about themselves as learners.
Thank you, Team PVC.
Laura, I told you, get it to that slide before they ask another question.
High school, take it away.
Yes, so we've gotten a lot of mileage out of this slide here because we showed it to you in 2023 and 2024. But today we're returning to it as a reminder of where we've been, where we are right now, and where we're headed in this school year. So as you know, you've heard it from everybody here, our goal is not to change the direction of school each year, but rather we don't want to introduce unconnected initiatives from year to year. We want to build a unified vision step by step. So each year here we build on the last through our planning and implementation stages, and now we're here at this moment. We have new spaces, we have a redesigned master schedule, which incorporates, among other things, our interdisciplinary courses and opportunities for passion-based learning, which we're going to talk about more this evening.
And of course, as you've seen already tonight, we have our district focus areas, and you'll see each of those focus areas in our 5 building goals. So these are our 5 building goals, and then in orange in parentheses, those are where we see the connections to the district focus areas. So our first goal is to explore and maximize the use of our new spaces. So as everyone here knows, the new spaces in the high school were designed from the ground up to really be about pedagogy and the student experience. The ILC, the Innovative Learning Center, which I think all of you have gotten the chance to see now, is probably one of the most amazing instructional spaces I've been in probably ever. And while it's beautiful in and of itself, what makes it so special is that it was designed to be a flexible space that could be allocated, adjusted, manipulated based on pedagogical planning. But it was also designed to encourage adult collaboration in a really different way than in a traditional high school setting. So in just 2.5 weeks, the team using the space has already grown and adjusted practices, and the use of the space is so different than it was in just this short span of time. So we actually had the chance to reflect with the team today, and when we first spoke to the meeting, I was a little nervous that it might have been a very different meeting, but it was an incredible conversation just to hear them talk about things like concrete examples. They were very hesitant at the beginning of the school year in the first couple of days to use the larger open space when you first walk into the ILC. You would walk in there and nobody was using that space. But now when you walk in there, that's one of the most popular spaces in the ILC, and even our students are telling us that that's their favorite space to be in because they can spread out and utilize the wall space. So there are other things that have cropped up, like teachers using the glass walls as writable surfaces. So you have this sort of living classroom around you. So it's a really incredible process to see how much has happened in just 2.5 weeks through this immersive experience. I think probably all of us have attended maybe a professional development session about using flexible spaces, and you leave those one-off sessions feeling inspired and excited to spend some money and try some new things. But this living in the ILC with a group of teachers in there is every day living through that professional learning experience. And all of the teachers in the ILC have consistently shared how much they love the teacher collaborative workspace in there. And the specific things that they're sharing are that they love seeing what other colleagues are working on. They love being able to pass a piece of student writing to a colleague and say, what do you think of this? Take a look at this. And they're motivated by trying new things because they're literally watching their colleagues do things in the classroom right across the way from them. So already we are starting to think about what we're seeing and learning in the ILC and what can come next. So for example, we've been talking with some faculty members about the possibility of creating similar adult collaboration hubs in other spaces in the building and asking questions like, what would happen if we took 5 classrooms, 5 teachers, and said, you have these 5 classroom spaces, make one of them your collaborative hub, and then use the other spaces however you want. Could the level of adult collaboration and learning that's happening in the ILC happen in other places in the building, maybe without the beauty of the ILC? So it's about the ILC, maybe with the beauty of the ILC, you know? But it's pushing us to think about these spaces not just as the beautiful new spaces, but how can we replicate some of the learning in maybe some of our more traditional spaces. Here's just a few photo reminders of some of these spaces. And we also have the cafeteria in here, which Mark is going to talk about more in the next goal.
So just to give you a little bit of background on our changes with our master schedule, we began discussing these changes in the spring of 2024 and formed a committee of teachers to develop a short list of priorities. And those priorities then informed that further development. We worked over the summer of 2024 with a consultant and then came back in the fall to get feedback from student groups and teacher groups, and then went through several drafts, landing where we are now. And I'll talk a little bit about some of that implementation as we go, but our goal this year is implementing and refining the new master schedule and the calendar changes associated with that. So we're here now in this new implementation year, and some of our goals in our new schedule include reducing assigned study hall periods, which increases opportunities for students to collaborate, and collaboration is a big theme through this redesign. Increases the opportunities for students to collaborate as well as their teachers' availability. We have collaborative time worked within the school day where all teachers are available. We're starting Tiger Tuesdays now. We just had our first to allow passion-based initiatives to have a meaningful space within our regular schedule. And our community lunch coincides now with the opening of the new space in the cafeteria. Wow, what a wonderful space that is. And you really see that in the use with the students. There are students in there all day long. You know, they have a break in between periods, and those are the first seats filled in the whole building. In that, it's in the cooking side, those like, I don't know what you call them, booths, right? Like the restaurant booths are super popular. So all of these new ideas are a priority this year in our implementation phase. One of the areas that our students and teachers are appreciating the most is extracurricular time built within the school day. We've really noticed an uptick in club participation. We just had our club fair, and students had a chance to choose new groups to join. But walking around the building during that extracurricular time that's built within the school day, I'm seeing more students in those club meetings than I've ever seen. What a wonderful thing to see. And we have a rotation schedule that, that kind of divides up which clubs are meeting when, and we are shuffling that a little bit. Club advisors are communicating and students are communicating. The goal in that rotation schedule is to minimize conflict so that if a student is participating in more than one, they can still effectively do that. And then you see that what you see here is an example of a student schedule, and we're learning to use Infinite Campus to schedule this so that students actually see what they sign up for on Tiger Tuesdays. That's a work in progress, but we're getting there. You see on this schedule that you have that a student has a field trip for sessions 1 and 2, going to Croydon Point Park with one of their teachers, and then coming back being part of a special guest presentation called The Physics of Combustion for session 3. This schedule is actually from our next October 7th Tiger Tuesday. Those are some of our sessions. All right.
So related to a lot of these new changes, I was able to spend some time reflecting this week with the Principals Advisory Committee and with our faculty at a faculty meeting. And so I just wanted to share some of the early reflections from both of the groups here. So from students, we heard a lot about using collab time much more than previous iterations of helping period, where while they liked having helping period, at the end of the day, they recognized that they were much less motivated to actually do work when it was at the end of the day. And we're seeing a large number of kids using the collab period. We're keeping attendance for those so that we can actually track the data, but it's been a pretty marked difference so far. Even just examples of students who are not necessarily doing work, but just going to spend time with teachers that they want to hang out with during that time. So there's lots of uses for the time. Students definitely like the longer common lunch where they have lunch with all of their friends. We've heard that over and over again. Many said that they love not having to worry about letter days and just Monday is Monday. And really the majority of positive comments did come in about the clubs and how students are getting so much more done with their clubs. We have a lot of students who are really dedicated to their clubs, and they're talking about the amount of work and activity and planning they're able to do. We still have the after-school club meetings, but now you have that's additional during the day meeting where everyone can attend, and then the after-school meetings are sort of come as you're able to, depending on what your other responsibilities are. And then on the faculty ends below, there have been some great reflections too. Faculty members are noticing sort of difference in approaches between the freshmen and sophomores and the upperclassmen. So they're seeing freshmen and sophomores really going all in on using collab time and the extracurriculars, and it being a little bit of a slower go with some of our older students, which is not surprising. They're expressing positive impacts on adult collaboration time. And the counseling office is loving our new schedule. It's teaming with students during collab period and extracurricular periods, because now they have these chunks of times where kids are coming in to work on their college applications, which they were not doing during helping period at 2:30 in the afternoon previously. We're also getting nice feedback from teachers about the consistency of scheduling and being able to plan far in advance. If you think about planning for like a guest speaker, it's really hard to tell a guest speaker on C day at 10:34, I'd like you to come into one section of my class. Now they're able to say, Tiger Tuesday, this is the date, or Monday at this time. And teachers report that there is much less wasted time in our new schedule versus our old schedule. So, early feedback. And then while much of the goal that Mark shared about is about our master schedule and use of time, but it's also part of our work was also around looking at our calendar and re-envisioning some of the things that have just always been. And parent-teacher conferences were one of those where we said, we know we can do better. We just want to really invest some time into figuring out what that should be. So one of the things we realized, for example, is that we just carry over the dates year to year. It's just always been, there are 3 dates in November, and that's what we do at Croton Park High School. And we said that that doesn't actually work for all of our students. So we said, why don't we space it out so that we had one set of conferences in November, another in January, and another in March to better meet where certain kids are at certain times of the year. So it's still the same number of families reached, just at different times of the year. But more importantly, we're also piloting team-based conferences where parents will be coming in with their students and meeting with the entire team of teachers and their counselor. So at this moment, our faculty has actually started having conversations to identify the students and families that we're going to invite for the first round of conferences in November. And those students are being selected, there's a list of criteria that we have, but they're being selected based on needing academic or personal support, maybe just being new to CHHS, maybe being a strong student who needs more opportunities and extension or enrichment. And then we're also sending out a survey to parents to see if there are parents who might want to request a team meeting that maybe we would miss in our identification process. And then once we finish identifying that final list of students, families will sign up for appointment slots similarly to the past, but they'll have longer 15 to 20 minute team conferences where they can really have a much more deeper, hopefully more authentic conversation than those sort of drive-by conversations. So we're pretty excited about this.
Okay, so the next goal that we're working on is to continue to explore assessment and feedback and to implement year-long grading. So over the last couple of years, we've been taking a closer look at the research surrounding grading and assessment. For example, a team of educators and administrators attended a series presented by Tri-States entitled Grading for Equity. And then we continued our own discussion with the larger faculty. We've also discussed the book on grading, which uses research from Duke University to promote the idea of focusing on student learning and feedback rather than traditional grades. We will continue to explore these ideas in the Assessment and Feedback District Committee as well. So as we study and discuss and further shape our ideas, we will support teachers and teams as they continue to develop innovative, authentic assessments. While traditional tests are a part of class assessment, we are also moving beyond solely measuring what students can recall on an exam. And we're focusing on assessments that ask students to apply their learning in meaningful ways. Assessments should mirror the kinds of tasks that students may encounter in college, career, civic life, such as solving real-world problems, collaborating with peers, communicating effectively. Authentic assessments can also make learning more engaging, as we've heard, and more relevant, while allowing teachers to offer feedback on strengths and areas for growth as well. So both last year and this year, some of our teachers are using assessment practices such as mastery-based or standard-based grading, and that emphasizes progress towards clearly defined learning goals or standards. These practices value a growth mindset and individualized pace. So building on this focus of meaningful assessment and feedback, Last year, several teachers piloted year-long or rolling gradebooks with success, and now it's been expanded school-wide. So a rolling gradebook, just as a refresher, allows grades to accumulate over the course of a full year rather than resetting each quarter. So that gives students more time to demonstrate growth and mastery. It removes those arbitrary deadlines of quarters, and that allows teachers to pace instruction more thoughtfully and responsively, not prematurely ending a unit because they have to get the assessment in for that quarter. For students, it can reduce the pressure of short-term marking periods. One assessment in the quarter model, one assessment can make or break a course grade because it then becomes permanent and is averaged in over 4 quarters, or with the 4 quarters. So it helps to provide families as well with a more accurate picture of that student progress over the course of the year. Of course, families are still going to receive feedback at regularly scheduled checkpoints throughout the year. That will still include that snapshot of the current grade at that moment, as well as the educator's feedback in comment form.
And nothing changes in terms of the college process. There's still a cumulative GPA that gets run in January, just like there has always been. So nothing impacts kids differently in terms of their future planning.
What about reporting mid-year grades?
Same, so we run it mid-year for the colleges in January.
But often in the college applications, if I recall, if you're doing early, you have to admit your first quarter, like put in your first quarter grade.
Yes,
So
we still do that. So there's still run first quarter.
Because it's just a moment of time, right? So at that time, you can run the average, and that current grade is what's reported.
And so we actually piloted this in 10 different classes last year. So we've done this process even with the first quarter grades, the January grades already. So this is sort of not so new for us in terms of that piece. It's more new that it's expanded to the whole school instead of those 10 classes. It's actually a lot easier now that the whole school is doing it rather than running 2 different models. But we want to test these things first. Okay. So our second to last goal, is about maintaining our focus on interdisciplinary team-taught courses and refining the existing curriculum while also thinking about developing new opportunities for future collaboration. And these courses, as I think everybody here knows, is one of the mainstays of how the Vision Map is really transforming the student experience in teaching and learning at the high school. So we now have approximately 250 of our students enrolled in 1 or more interdisciplinary classes this year. So we've really gotten to the point that we wanted to be at now, where more than half of our students are taking 1 or more of these classes. These are no longer pilot classes or sort of one-off experiences that kids are taking. They're available to so many of our students. And the goal will remain, this goal will remain a focus for us for many years to come. I don't anticipate a time where this is not one of our goals. And we're still focused on providing the extensive planning and collaboration time that these courses require for our teachers. That's something that's very important and very different than teaching a traditional course. The level of collaboration and time to do that that's needed is significant. So we currently have 8 of these courses running and are already beginning the cycle to work with teachers who might be interested in proposing new courses. And we're really excited to now have our new district committee that will be a part of the interdisciplinary learning to support the growth and sort of bring more voices into the process and have more voices looking at the same kind of research that we're looking at. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what our college profile looks like. This is always on our website every year and it changes every year. But the college profile is one of the most important documents that colleges receive every year to highlight what's unique about our school and tell the story of not just our whole school, but what that particular cohort of students graduating that year got to experience. And so obviously interdisciplinary courses are a highlight in our profile. And then around the edges, you'll see just some quotes from college admissions representatives that we've spoken to as we developed these courses. These are all reps from top tier institutions, and just reading some of what they shared as feedback about our courses I think is validating. So one rep said, "You should have seen the look of excitement on my face as I was reading the planned offerings. These are amazing. There's enormous value added in that it promotes interdisciplinary exploration and an approach to learning students most commonly enter when they get to college. Some of these additional courses are great representations of the enrichment I mentioned before. Training your students to think cross-curricularly is fantastic and something that we emphasize at our college. They need to see how things are connected to develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills. And I thought this last quote is particularly important. So the choice of courses that students take within the school's curriculum, so not just the rigor, but the whys of certain course choices or decisions to participate in unique programs offered by the school. Often these align with their potential academic interests or, at a school like ours, reflect their likelihood to explore beyond the scope of their major and potential for maximizing opportunities offered through the flexible curriculum. And so I think those are important perspectives from higher education, and as we know, many institutions of higher education have full departments that are focused on interdisciplinary studies as well. And our faculty goal is exploring what success means alongside the district work and our district committees. And so with our faculty and building planning council, we are looking at research, discussing trends, identifying opportunities to share unique individualized success stories, and helping our students to write their own unique stories that will help them highlight and capitalize on what makes their story unique. So some of the ways that we're going to help our students do that are through capitalizing on the Tiger Tuesday experiences, academic concentrations, and 2 internal student leadership development programs.
So as part of this exploration of success, we're really guided by some amazing words that were written by our class of 2025 valedictorian, Sonia Mukherjee. We often have tendencies to define ourselves by numbers, whether that be grades, goals scored, a PR time, or even the amount of likes on an Instagram post. It's easy to view our lives through a quantitative lens, but living with this mindset is far more exhausting than the alternative: to value the process and the effort put into something, that the studying or practice outweigh its outcome, to understand that we are more than an academic or athletic performance. Recognizing your life as qualitative forces you to embrace everything you may have disregarded in a frenzy to chase these numbers. Academically, this shift allowed me personally to discover and hone in on topics that I was truly passionate about. Further, in slowing down, my class has transformed from competitive spaces to communities. Laura mentioned that we have 2 leadership programs. Craig spent a little while talking about one of these, and that's the collaboration with CET. The other is a high school-based program that is developing kind of in the model of what students have been experiencing. A couple of students have been selected to experience through the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Foundation, and that experience. But it's really trying to build chances for students to lead within the high school and to come up with these service opportunities and to kind of promote this within the high school. So really, it's a work in progress for them. I think they're not sure exactly what it's going to look like, but we have a leadership group started, so pretty exciting.
Okay, so academic concentrations, this program is now in its 2nd year. Our now sophomores are continuing from last year, and our interested freshmen are invited to join, as well as any sophomores who would like to join now as well. But concentrations, as a reminder, it's a way for students to really delve into their passions, to discover new interests. It's a way for them to build their own stories. That include those unique experiences. How do they set themselves apart, and how do they forge their own pathway to success? Because we know that's individual. So here is a sampling of some of the opportunities that students can take advantage of this year, or some that had happened at the end of last year. So a couple of highlights, because there's a lot of exciting things here, but we have formed a relationship with Northwell Health, Phelps Hospital. We're in the process of doing that now, but until that's completely up and running, they invited us for our STEM students to apply to join the Junior Leadership Council this year at the hospital, which is going to be a great experience for those students who are accepted. Our interested humanities and civics students will be invited to participate in the Living History Project, which will be facilitated by the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center. Sounds like a wonderful experience that they've done before in the past, where students are matched up with the ancestors of Holocaust survivors that they are the descendants, so that way they're able to continue to share those stories. And so they'll interview them, and then they'll present those stories in creative ways. We're also going to continue to offer, we started this last week, but we'll continue with our Tiger Tuesdays. We're going to have a workshop on Intro to Public Health, the physics of combustion, which you heard about, as well as cultural and educational field trips. One of our PE teachers, Marty McDonald, he's planning what sounds like an amazing health and wellness career fair. Some of our students are stepping up to take leadership roles in planning and in the planning and execution of that. And I pass along as many outside opportunities that come my way. I email those out to the students, and they take advantage of them. And when they come back, they are so excited. A student who had a summer experience at Dia Beacon, kids who went to the Tri-States Engineering Fair with their families on a weekend and said, "Thank you for telling me about that. I now made this connection." Students are just taking advantage of all of them. They're excited, they're learning, they're passionate, and they're building their portfolios that demonstrate their interests and abilities. So their definition of success is unique, and the experiences that they're having, they're uniquely, authentically them, right? We always ask kids, how do you set yourself apart from others? But it doesn't make sense to just start doing things to fill your resume. That story that you're telling, you need to be authentically you in that, because where you end up, you're not going to be where you want to if you weren't honest with yourself along the way. So I think that concentrations is an excellent way for students to find their path.
That's all.
Bill, do you have anything you want to?
I don't think it's working. I mean, the only questions like I had, and like I know a lot of my senior classmates had, were already about colleges, which you guys answered, because people were kind of asking, oh, with the rolling grade book, like how's it gonna work? And I have to send in like, you know, my first quarter grades and stuff. But that definitely cleared it up a lot, so I'm gonna share that back to my fellow seniors. And besides that, yeah, I have actually noticed like in extracurriculars, I'm like co-president of Chinese club, and we already had like a really great turnout compared to prior years. I think we had like 30 kids in the club, like just on our first meeting, which was really awesome. We already planned a trip. So yeah, so I just think it's really great, and everything's actually running really smoothly, and I honestly have not heard anything negative, so it's very exciting.
So, a couple of things. First is, because of the change of the Tiger Tuesday schedule, which in essence creates a block of time of over 2 hours that afternoon, right? Where I assume some of those exciting opportunities that were described are going to be available to students. I think there's a perception, at least I've seen some social media comments, which I monitor just to see what people are saying, that as a consequence, learning, i.e. class time, because some people think class time equals learning, is diminished. And we really don't get anything accomplished during those 25-minute periods on Tiger Tuesdays. And so once a month, we are now in a situation where kids are not getting the learning that they should get. So I think for the community, it may be important to ensure that it's understood what the opportunities are, that, and the fact that taking care of the standard, what I'll call curriculum standards, is not going to be materially diminished because we have one period every however many times it is, where we're not, it's not a full class.
Yeah, not necessarily.
And that's just an observation. I noticed you did not talk about the concentrations, right? The civics concentration or the STEM concentration, which I know is still out there, correct? And I think it's important that when we look at what you talked about with college admissions officers and the college process, application process, that those are important. When we look at the dual enrollment opportunity slide for college credit and the advanced placement courses, I know there's a perception among some parents and students probably that the way to success in college applications is to have as many of those AP courses under my belt as possible. But what I hear from what you've presented is that the dual enrollment, the additional opportunities, the demonstration of passion and a feeling of commitment to something is going to be much better recognized by college admissions officers. And that's something that I don't know if that's really the case, and I'd like to hear about
I
it.
think that sort of think about it as in addition to. So most schools have AP classes, dual enrollment classes, right? Like that's a given, right? And so our students need to take challenging courses, make choices that are right for them, try elective courses to build their story. But often our students and our college reps are telling us what makes a student stand out, what makes them unique, what makes them different from other kids in Westchester. So our kids are going to have all of those things that all other kids get, the AP courses, all of that. But our kids also are building these portfolios of experiences. So students who are freshmen right now, for example, they're going to have on a list of their experiences after 4 years of Tiger Tuesdays, they're going to have somewhere around 50 different guest speakers, workshops, experiences to pull from in their portfolios. Our kids who are doing academic concentrations are building a 4-year portfolio of in-depth experiences. And those are the things that are in addition to the unique stories, the what makes you different and stand out. It's not sort of instead of those other measures, because you do need, depending on where you're going to college, right? Different colleges have different requirements. You need those classes. That's a piece of it. But the stories are what makes somebody stand out as different than the other 10 kids who take those same courses, if that makes sense.
So I've recently gone through this process, and as a parent of a kid from 8th grade who knew he wanted to go to a competitive engineering program, yes, and I think there are some realities in terms of the marketplace of college admissions, and I think it's really important to be very clear to our community, because to me it's an equity and access situation. I can figure this stuff out, but other kids come from other backgrounds that they may not be able to navigate the new nuances. I think it's really important in our advising to kind of do some straight talk a little bit about what are the ramifications of these decisions. And like, for example, if you do want to go to an engineering program, they do want to see that you're taking a certain AP, like BC Cap. Like that's it. It doesn't matter what your so yes, I agree that having these other experiences is important and will set our kids aside, but I think we also, just going back to these ideas of like, I think we need to be also mindful as we go along with this on some of the other realities and really clearly communicate with the community.
Be able to speak also to it's a false dichotomy to say that because and you're not saying this, but it's a false dichotomy to read this as, we have all of these things, so that's instead of the rigorous courses. All of these things are in addition to the rigorous courses, not taking away from them. Even all of our interdisciplinary courses, those are choices in addition to maybe the more traditional courses that are offered. So it's really about expanding choice and options and being thoughtful as students are starting to learn what types of, because not all students know what types of colleges they want to go to early on, and then they get to junior year, which is also, as you've heard before, one of the reasons we're shifting our math sequence, right? You get to junior year and you're like, oh, engineering's my thing, but I didn't start in the right math courses. So now we're taking away those barriers, for example, for those students. So I think there's a communication piece for sure, but really wanting to make clear that it's not a choice between doing all these great things and the list of requirements that you need for a particular college.
Yeah, so I did something a little bit unconventional because it's late and I wanted to make sure. So I wrote a little thing in advance from the presentation. I just want to say that tonight's discussion presentations were really helpful, but I did want to surface some questions or complexities that I've heard and share them in the spirit of just how tonight you've been sharing a lot of important information and nuances to your plans in the spirit of trying to make this as productive of a year as possible. So I saw that there are many exciting possibilities with the goals that are presented today. And as I listened to it, I try to imagine different types of students in what you've outlined. Also, because as an educator, I see a lot of different students. What I see is, as proposed, it will be very exciting and beneficial to some students, but I do have some questions on how this might impact others, and I'm sure you're asking these questions that I'm about to ask as well. So I'm sharing these questions and complexities so they will be taken into consideration if they haven't been so far with your work as you're bringing these goals to light. I agree, as a district we should explore different ideas of student success and ways to assess them, without a doubt. Very exciting, but that being said, kind of what some of the points that were being raised earlier, there are many students in the district who do want to excel in some of the standard metrics of success, and such as the selective college, majoring in a certain program or a certain kind of job post their time in CHUFSD. So we, the reality is that they will be entering a workforce or a college system where there are widely accepted standards that are still used to assess their competencies and acceptance. And I hear that you plan on including a number of those, and a lot of what's being proposed is in addition. So very often, these widely accepted standards are also used to determine scholarships, internships, and other important opportunities for learning and growth. So to me, this is a little bit of an equity and access issue. So we need to make sure that what we're doing here in CHUFSD continues to open doors with our students, whether it's a special experience or receiving financial aid, support so they can pursue their goals. And to me, so for example, some of the new partnerships that you're outlining, the passion projects, maybe in the future, some of what's being designed can align so that students are better positioned to apply for different scholarships, different learning opportunities that are out there. So I just wanted to say that we please make sure that there's also a plan and action steps to still serve these students. It sounds like that's already being thought about. And then there's also always the issue of time, and there's only so many minutes in the day. So I just want to be mindful of how we balance all these exciting new initiatives with leaving enough instructional time for students, particularly those who are struggling academically. Sounds like you're already thinking about that, but I just want to put that out there. The community does have questions about that. And that, I've also heard from some families that their students do benefit from routine, and they have some sensory sensitivity, so we just want to be mindful that we still are serving those students' needs. And then, this was already brought up today, so I know you're already thinking about it, but our community is very concerned about screen time. So how can, as these plans unfold, can we be sensitive to the amount of time that our students are spending learning while using a screen, and also the data privacy that goes along with these tools. So, you know, I just wanted to lay that out there. It's obviously beyond the scope of tonight. This is a continuing discussion, but I wanted to share this because these are some of the things I've been thinking about, but also that I've been hearing from the community. And so I think the more that we bridge communication around these topics, people will get even more excited about what you plan. Thanks.
So, I think those are some very important points, but it sounds to me like that is, because of that, of those kinds of considerations, that is going to put maybe a different focus on guidance. Because I can see helping students as they enter into the high school years, and then as they continue and start more to refine and reflect on where they see themselves going. Guidance is the place where we hope, we would expect we'll be able to help them. The student, faculty, parent conferences do that as well, but that's more academically focused to those classes. And I just think it's very important, and this is perhaps even from board perspective, a budgetary issue to ensure that we have those resources to support students, including, as Allison talked about, students who may, kind of not really know where they're going and, maybe struggling with things that are not so regimented.
I remember that's one of the reasons we added our 4th counselor this year, really wanting to get some deeper attention on our younger students. We felt our 11th and 12th graders were getting a lot of services, but sometimes 11th grade is too late if you're building a portfolio and building a story.
Let's start earlier.
Yep. And so, I think it's really good that, those have been thought about. I know in one presentation that went on for longer than all you folks probably like, at least we hear that there are things that will be considered, and and hopefully we'll hear over the years, over this year, how things have progressed and what you've been finding.
Thanks for all of this so far. I think obviously the nature of the questions that we're asking means we're all thinking about this. This is a lot. It's a tremendous amount of information tonight from everybody, but I just want to focus a couple of questions on the high school as well. So very exciting to see how the new spaces and the new schedule structures are impacting things very concretely, and it was very helpful, I think. I'm glad we were able to hear from Phil, and also glad that we were able to hear some of that student and teacher feedback just about how, again, those changes are influencing collaboration and also building community, which I know is one of the big goals for having the common lunch and also expanding those spaces. With all these new things going on, and I think it's been easy to focus on some of those exciting visual and physical changes, I guess for me there are a couple of things that that are new and maybe I missed, so I need some clarification on just to sort of better understand. Noting, the question that actually Phil asked also about the rolling grade book. So are we understanding correctly now when we say this is across the board? Is there a rolling grade book for every course in the high school?
Yes.
Across the board. And how has that been communicated to parents? Because I will say I'm a high school parent. I didn't know that. How has this been communicated to parents?
So we sent some information out in the spring, but we have a whole presentation on October 8th when everybody comes in for curriculum night, where we'll go over all the details and the college piece and all of that. And that will be told to parents in advance so that they will hopefully be more likely to attend that intro session.
Okay, so it'll be presented sort of upfront as a reason to sort of come and find out about it?
Yes, so I'm going to outline that these are some of the topics that we're discussing at the intro meeting, because sometimes parents will skip the intro meeting.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, I consider myself to be an avid reader of the materials coming out of all of the buildings, and so the fact that I literally read everything and missed it tells me that this is something that's not really widespread. I don't want to do polling to find that out, but I think it's really crucial because we know back to school night takes place at a time that is difficult for parents who have commutes and other commitments to attend, childcare issues. So will there be multiple means of sort of communication and other sort of follow-up options to make that? This is a substantial change. Obviously, students have questions about it, parents are going to have questions about it. And in the context of guidance, I think also, for there to be sort of like an explainer, this is like a significant change. So it's like, I'm just going to advocate for having this information available and easily findable for people who need to be able to find it. One of the things that was mentioned was that, for example, the college profile is on our website every year. Could you tell us where that is on the website?
Yes. If you go to the CHHS counseling site,
yeah,
and I believe it's under college. It's the first tab.
Under here.
Guidance, college planning, home.
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm just trying to understand, because I've looked for this over and over again, so maybe you guys can let me know afterwards, because I actually tried to look for it during this meeting, and I'm not seeing it.
If you click on CHHS,
yep,
it's the first.
Thank you.
The first
you know what? This is a hard thing for me. I'm sorry to use everybody's time to ask my own specific question. It wasn't actually intentional, but it was also to be able to read the details because it was included in the presentation and I couldn't actually see it very well. So I appreciate that. In terms of parent-teacher conferences turning into parent-teacher-student conferences, which also seems to be a significant change, you're talking about spreading them over November, January, and March, and it looks like prioritizing students in need or students who are performing ahead, at least from what was written on the slide that you shared earlier. So in terms of sort of like an information plan to families, how will that be shared? Because that also, to me, seems like a significant change from sort of having access to 70 minutes of teacher sort of time over the course of the typical parent-teacher conferences. If I'm meeting with 7 of them, 10 minutes each, 70 minutes, to now what you're talking about is a team of 15 and possibly not even having access to that in the fall. How does the sort of like the cadence of how other students will be accommodated, how is that sort of going to be shared? And is the intention that every single family who wants to, every single family who wants to participate in a parent-teacher conference will have that opportunity with this change? Can you explain a little bit about how that's going to work?
Sure. So we've never been able to accommodate every single family in a parent-teacher conference, even in our old model. So we're still meeting the same number of total families that will have slots available. It's just more about being targeted about who needs a conference at a particular time. But we're also sending out a form to families who might want to request a conference. So that way it's not just us picking the people who we think, we're also reaching out to families and saying, do you think your child needs a team conference, so that we can accommodate that. Some parents don't necessarily want to come in the fall, for example, or their kids are doing really well and we can call them and give them a quick update in a different format, for example. So those are never the only time that we have conferences with parents. We're meeting with parents all year long. So we would have a parent reach out and said, I want to have a conference with my child's teachers. We do that all the time, regardless. And now we have collab time, extracurricular time, potentially even tighter Tuesday time. We've already brought families in for team meetings by their request now. So parent-teacher conferences are kind of like a formalized moment in time, but they're not the only time that we have these team meetings. But that can all be communicated clearly, I think, when I send out the information out about signing up for appointments for parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful because, again, I can only speak from my own experience, but I guess the information about all these other ways of getting information, it certainly hasn't been on my radar. So I guess that's the source of my question, because I think for many families, the parent-teacher conference is in fact like a significant time for people to come in, and there's a cadence to it, and we've been doing it since kids were in elementary school. So that sort of change, it requires like a little bit of information and also a little bit of sort of an explanation of what the high school is hoping to accomplish by doing something like that. I think in the context of asking our students to be more independent, advocating for themselves, etc., there still has to be a balance in terms of the communication coming home, I think, to families about all of this stuff, because it's an important time, for our students generally. I mean, I think every year is important, but I think high school, as we know, it's like a little bit, it's a little bit different. I think that's it for me for right now. Thank you.
just want to say how glad, it's probably the right word, but how grateful maybe I am that you mentioned the grading for equity. I personally love that framework, and I think it's something that the kids would benefit from greatly. Thank you for looking into it.
Thank you for your presentation tonight and for your dedication to students and to enhancing their experiences and allowing them to, I think, just come through as individuals is what I see all of these enhancements doing, just really trying to find where they can feel seen in a system. So thank you for that.
You have to be back at work in like 8 hours.
Stay.
Michael has to stay, everyone has to stick around.
What's that?
You're not gonna stay?
Yes, I will.
You can leave right after.
Or not.
I could have left an hour ago. But I like you all too much, all of you.
So, going back to our agenda, we'll now move into instructional personnel. It is with great sadness that I recommend this action. And while I hope you do really well, you leave a huge hole here. So you will not be forgotten. Recommended action be resolved, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of Michael Clocken, principal of Peter Van Cortlandt Middle School, effective end of day, October 16th, 2025.
So,
I don't know if you got a second if you didn't.
If we don't give a second, we
Oh, right, we don't.
yeah.
Right.
On the question, I mean, I'll just say again how sad we are that you're going. We're very excited for you and your new opportunity, and good luck to you there. But
Thank you.
Don't be a
Not an easy
stranger.
decision.
With
Well-
gratitude, Michael.
Huh?
With gratitude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise. This was a great partnership. I remember the day that I interviewed to be assistant principal in 2007, and the questions that were asked of me that day, and what I got a sense of is the same thing I got a sense of today. Neil has a lot of questions. You know, one of the most amazing things about working here was that no matter who was on the board, I always felt that people had their kids' best interests at heart. And it made me feel really comfortable here to be myself. And you know, that's a big risk, you know, because I got a lot of energy. The thing that I take with me is all the wonderful aspirations that we've had here. And I want you to understand, and this is what has informed my decision, every child in this world deserves that. And that's what I really want to replicate in another place, a place that I feel needs that. And last but not least, you know, I'll never forget my time here. And probably the most horrifying is now I have to act like an adult all the time. Instead of a middle schooler, which, you know, I was very comfortable. So thank you for your support over the years, for your trust, your confidence, and most of all, your friendship. That doesn't have a geographical boundary. So I will always consider you my friends and people I can rely on, and I know who I can pick up and call, and that's that. And I'm really sorry that, you know, a choice had to be made. So thank you.
We're really excited.
And thank you to the district administration who, you know, promoted me, my colleagues here who also always made me a better administrator. Thank you.
We're Okay,
You can vote.
all in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Twice.
No.
Not goodbye, another month.
We're saving our speeches for the party.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night. Get home safe, everyone.
Take a
Greg, they start asking more questions. I'm trying, Michael.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Fred.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3.2, instructional personnel recommendation. Home tutors recommended action be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the appointments of Corey Martineau and Amy Shaw. Did I say that correctly? Tutors/home instructors at a rate of $60 per hour effective September 19th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Item 3.3, 2025-2026 translation support and planning for multi-language learners. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the appointment of Kirby Mosenthal and Montserrat Marina Yosa as transition support? Okay. And planning for multi-language learners at a stipend of $1,000 each.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Is that your first second, Allison?
Well, yes, it is.
I
remember, I think I said the right thing.
Sorry, get in there. Item 4.1, consent agenda approval. Recommended action be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves all items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Allison.
On the question?
Excuse me 1 second.
Is there a board member needed to go to the Hawaii trip?
No, I already asked, they're full.
I think we need a business official.
Exactly.
If you went, you would have to do exploring. You would have to,
Oh, yeah.
It's
you know, hike
worthwhile.
up volcanoes.
I would do beach explore. Explore the beach. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Moving into the closing of the meeting, item 5.1, board reports. Advocacy?
So the advocacy committee met on Monday. Week is blur. So the advocacy committee met on Monday. We reviewed all of the proposed resolutions and proposed bylaws for the upcoming NISBA annual meeting. We will put together our thoughts and recommendations on those for the next business meeting in October. We do have a couple items we'll want to have discussion with the board about, and then share our recommendations on some of those other proposals so that we can direct Neil as our delegate to the voting on those at the annual meeting. I did want to make just one more plug. You will see that in your email boxes today from Westput, there was still a link. The LHUC Advocacy Priorities Survey is still open. If you've not filled it out, please do. Thank you, Neil, and we let me know you had filled it out. Thank you both as well. If anyone hasn't filled that out, Steve, you can fill it out too. We'll get that in. that is going to be very helpful for us regionally in setting our legislative priorities and what is sure to be an interesting year for the budget, I imagine. So, thank you. No, I'm sorry. No?
That's fine. Audit is meeting on October 9th, so as we reported before, that's our next meeting.
So exciting. Can't wait to
Riveting.
hear.
Oh, there's gonna be more, there's gonna be more than here.
I love it, I love it. Board development,
We have no updates since the last meeting.
communications is meeting, do we have a meeting?
October 8th, 6th?
Yes.
The Monday.
Upcoming.
Yes, the upcoming Monday, that will be our next meeting.
Policy.
Policy. Policy met on Tuesday, September 16th. We had discussion on a number of different policies, but we will not have any policy to report for first reading on October 4th. Oh, I'm sorry, October 7th, but my hope is that we will have finished consideration on a number of policies at our next meeting on October 16th, I think it is. It's that Tuesday. We switched a couple of meetings because of conflicts, some times of a couple of meetings and some dates of a couple of meetings. And I guess that's all to report on policy. I do have one other thing, which is really more a polling of the board matter, but I just thought I would mention it because hopefully, even though nobody's in the audience, that anybody who is is still watching the live stream or who may watch the video of this meeting to the end will know this, and I hope this will be not only cheered by us here, but will be mentioned to the community otherwise. Yesterday, there was an announcement that a graduate of Groton Harmon High School, Jack Cohen, class of 2012, was the winner, or announced as the winner of the 2025 Relentless Musical Award, which is an award given by the American Playwrights Society to a playwright, and it's an award founded in honor of Philip Seymour Hoffman, and it places, I'm reading from their nomination form, it says, places special emphasis on works that are fearless in their choice of subject matter, featuring audacious, honest storytelling. Jack was given this award, I should say a rather substantial cash prize to it, for his musical, which is called Joe Jenkins Before the Galactic High Court of Consciousness, which is the story of a marine biologist turned actuary who has embraced ordinary existence and accepted what she can't control, climate change, the death of the universe, etc. But now her boyfriend is proposing not just marriage, but children, and an alien is at her door demanding that she defend humanity to an intergalactic council. And the award, when the award was given, the artistic director of this selection committee said, "Our committee and judges succeeded in their near impossible task of finding a work of art that embodied both Phil's relentless, rip-your-heart-out passion and Adam, and that's Adam Schlesinger, co-founder of Fountains of Wayne, crystalline, ironic pop sensibility. Our hope is that by winning this year's award, Cohen's stunning climate change, science fiction, character-driven allegory will be one step closer to getting the full protection it deserves." Now, I had the opportunity to see Jack as a middle school and high school student in theatrical productions and in music, and his talent was recognized. I am hopeful that this will get produced, and I look for great things ahead for him, and I think it's something for which our school system, school district, and our community can be proud.
1,000%.
That was policy liaison reports. I don't know that we have any. Oh, go.
I do. So sorry. So just quickly, I attended the Village Idea Committee. Waiting for the minutes to be posted from it. There was a number of upcoming opportunities for the community to attend some of the events that look really fantastic. Once I get more information, I'll just send it along the board. And it does seem like there is some interest in seeing if there's ways to get students involved, like helping out with some of the events. So hopefully somebody will be reaching out to me so we can figure out how to facilitate that. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, on September 10th, the same night as the Spencer Field dedication, I attended the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES meeting on regionalization, where different priorities were discussed. I will circulate, I haven't written it up yet, my notes of that meeting. The one thing I will say, and I know the superintendent is aware of this, is that there are 4 focus areas, I guess we could call it, that those districts who want to participate or continue their participation in the planning of action items relating to those need to indicate, superintendent needs to indicate no later than September 30th that we will participate in 1, 2, 3, or 4 of those items. I don't know, Steve, if you want to speak to that at all now, or just what you understand, because I know that's something that will be coming from you if that's being submitted, and it might be good for us all to know.
So we haven't had a chance yet as a full administrative team to review those and make some recommendations and some thinking around it, but we plan to do that on Monday, and then we'll follow up with the board in terms of our thinking there. But we've committed to Neil from the beginning that we wanted to be robust partners in this.
Neil being Neil Boyle.
Neil Boyle, yes.
Yeah, commitment to me doesn't mean it.
Yes, well, important, but yes, to Neil Boyle, but we wanted to be robust partners in this, and there are multiple areas where we certainly want to be a partner, including pre-K funding and UPK access, as well as special education related priorities, so we certainly will be involved.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I missed that, because I know you have some notes, Neil, that you'll be sharing with us from the regionalization meeting, I believe, right?
Yeah, I said I did get around to writing them up.
Yeah, okay, looking forward.
I actually misplaced my notes, so I have to find them before I can write.
Okay, well, standing by. Unfortunately, because of a conflict tonight, I wasn't able to attend the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee, to which I'm the liaison, but I just wanted to mention for the benefit of the community, one of the great initiatives that they have worked on in coordination with the village was the implementation of crosswalk signs at 3 key crosswalks in our community. I'm sure you've seen them because you have to slow down to make sure that you don't drive into the crosswalk sign. So there is one at one of the most heavily trafficked crossings to PVC, which is on Cleveland between Park and Alcott, essentially. That's a major crossing. There's another one on Old Post heading towards the high school. I think that's the right place. And then another one might be on Maple. I'm trying to think of where. No, I'm sorry, I'm wrong about the Old Post. It's actually in front of the library, so there's now a sign there, which is again another crosswalk for CET students. And then there is another one either on Old Post or Maple. I feel like I can see it, but I can't see where it is.
Old Post has a crossing guard.
Right, it has a crossing guard there. So these three, the investment in the signage to ensure that the crosswalks are clearly marked, especially at this time of year where so many people are walking to and from school. I think is really, really significant. So I'm thankful that that was made a priority by the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee last year, and that we're seeing, seeing that come to fruition. What continues to be on the list is to engage in conversation with them about our crossings, because there are so many questions about the crossings, and the Five Corners in particular seems to still be like a focus point and a challenge despite all the extra resourcing. So that remains on the list. I'm hoping there's a meeting I can attend in person that's not on a Thursday to continue to follow up on it, but I'll be in touch with my colleagues there just to check in on some of this stuff. So I wanted to report that. Oh, and then in terms of, the other sort of like, so we seem to be combining our liaison reports and our other updates, so I'll just note that I know I'll note one of the things, and then maybe Sarah will maybe note one of the other things, because we both were at some of the same events. But I was very excited to have an opportunity to attend, not this past week, but the week before, Westchester Putnam School Boards Association board officers sort of like seminar and training, where we had the opportunity to hear from experienced board presidents and vice presidents and talk about some of the sort of like the governance issues and practices that can inform and help build cohesion and good communications among boards and between boards and communities. So it was a really informative session. One of our speakers was Sarah herself, and I found it to be like a really, really useful opportunity. So as always, would encourage my fellow trustees to take advantage of these opportunities to meet people from other school boards, hear what they are doing in other places, and bring back those learnings. I find it immensely, immensely helpful. That's it.
Yeah, I think following up on that, the other recent West Pet event that we had was earlier this week. Several of us attended the West Pet Roundtables, which is a great event that we hold annually in the fall. That really gives an opportunity for school board members and superintendents to sit down and discuss on a number of different topics. There was a lot of interest. I think we had 3 full tables during each session discussing the Portrait of a Graduate. There was discussions about civics and education. At one of the tables I was sitting in geared from civics and education to sort of a more civics and action in discussing the recent cell phone legislation and hearing from a number of student board representatives who were also there that evening on sort of how things are going in their districts and things they are seeing that are working well and ways to improve that, and things that they're pointing out to their districts and ways we can all learn on how to and continue to improve those measures and reducing cell phone usage in our schools and ensuring that our kids are screen-free as much as possible. So we had great discussion. The recaps of those evenings have already been sent out by Westlet, so I would encourage everybody to take a look at those. And we have a lot of great events coming up as well. I believe the next event will be a lunchtime Friday webinar that is a joint webinar between finance officials and legal teams discussing negotiations, practices, and things on the horizon. So I would encourage people to take a look at that, and you can always let Denise know if you want to sign up for any of those. So, thank you.
We move into item 5.2, adjournment of the meeting. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby adjourns the meeting at 10:56 p.m.
So moved. Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Have a good night, everyone.
My husband.
Yes.
I was like, oh, is it going to be too late? I was like,